Or you're at a match or you're at practice and you're listening to guys talk, and some of them are saying, they're asking velocities. What's your velocity? Oh, I'm 2750. Oh, I'm running 2990. I'm running 3050. I'm running 2875. What does all that mean, right? What does it really mean? Hi everyone, I'm the four-gun guy. And today I wanted to talk about velocities because it's very interesting to watch the good shooters and what's happening now in the PRS competition world. So what I wanted to talk about today was let's talk about the little kind of history of velocity in the last 5 years. Let's talk about a real world scenario that I put to the group that I shoot with. And many of these guys are very good shooters. And I posed a question to them, and I want to go through their responses. And then I want to talk about what those some of the things that we can glean from those responses. And then we'll have some final thoughts. So if you're ready to go, let's get to it. Well, when I first started shooting PRS, which was about, I guess, 4.5 years ago, maybe 4.5 years ago, I shot my first few matches using factory ammo. In fact, it was Hornady ELDM 6.5 Creedmoor. And I matched their match ammo, the white box, and I loved it. It was great. And I had no concept of any of the intricacies of reloading and all that stuff. All I knew was I chambered around. I had it somewhat trued with my rifle, although I was new to that concept too. And I was hitting targets, it wasn't pretty, but I was hitting some targets. And I would be elated when I hit a target at 800 yards. I mean, I would just go crazy. I couldn't believe I was doing that. Then I got into reloading, and that is a whole different world and a whole nother level of things to consider. And velocity is one of those things. So when we create our new cartridge, if we're reloading, let's say we go to, like I just, 2 years ago, I went to 6mm BRA. You've got your case, you go out, do some research, and I've got a whole video on this. Do your research. What powder seems to be working for people, what bullet, what seating depth, all that stuff, and velocity wise. And then you work up your cartridge, right, to the right powder load, the right seating depth. And you're doing all that initially looking at the velocity that you're getting, right? You're looking for that plateau, that node of velocity for your charge, powder charge. And once you find that, you should be good to go. Seating depth could change depending on how much you're eroding the lands of your barrel. And generally on barrels like the 6mm BRA, the Dasher, GT is a little different because that, for some reason, that's eroding the lands a little more, I think. But you should be getting, say, 3,000 rounds. Now, some people are going to go, I only get 2,000 rounds out of mine. Okay, gotcha. Maybe you're running hotter, faster, and that can have an effect on your lands erosion as well. But when we start talking about velocity, and back when I joined, I'm going to get back on track here, sorry. Everyone was talking about velocity, and the faster the better. Now, for PRS, what is it? I think it's 3,200 feet per second. You can't go beyond that, even for open. I think it's 3,200. I'd have to check on that. But most people were chasing the 3,000 feet per second mark, right? All these shooters were. And for a couple years, that was the thing, right? If you're running a GT or a Dasher or whatever, you got to be up there in the 2,900s to make it really work. Well, fast forward to last year, and last year I started to hear things like, well, all these good shooters have slowed down. Really? Well, why have they slowed down? Because at 2950 and 3000 feet, they can't see the trace of their bullet as it flies through the air from their rifle. And I can't see the trace, but that's because my eyes aren't that good. Even with a really good scope, I still can't see trace. But they couldn't, so they've started to slow their velocities down into the 2850, 2800 range. And my bullets that I use Sierra Match Kings, and I also use Hornady ELDM bullets to reload, but the Match Kings have been my go-to bullet, and they like a velocity of about 2750 to 2775. They've been very good for me there, very true, very on target, and any misses are really me. It's not my cartridge. But I had a question because I keep thinking about all this stuff. And I thought, what really is the difference, right, between these velocities? So I asked the question to my team. Let's get into that and see what they said. Okay, here's the question. And I'll put this up probably in bullet points here, but I'm going to read the whole thing. So here's what I asked him. Target is 850 yards away with a 10-mile-an-hour full value wind with a 107 grain Sierra Match King bullet. And I look at two velocities. This is for my 6mm BRA. And let's say these two velocities both have a great flat node. They true well, everything's good. First velocity is 2750, which gives me an elevation of 7.1 mils and a windage estimate of 1.8 mils, right? The second velocity is 2950, which gives me an elevation of 6 mils, so 1.1 mils less than the 2750 because our bullet's going faster. And a windage of 1.6 instead of 1.8, so 2/10 narrower. Difference in the time of flight is 1/10 of a second. 1/10 of a second is the difference in the time of flight. And I asked them, tell me why the faster round is better. I'm asking because I was thinking about this, and if the answer is less elevation, my response is, so what? My ballistics calculator that I'm using, my Kestrel, is going to put me on target if I've chewed my dope no matter what. So I really don't care, right, about the less elevation. If the answer is less windage adjustment, my response again, so what? If I miss with whichever windage value I use for whichever velocity I run, I'm simply going to adjust for the impact. And then I said, I'm honestly interested in what everybody thinks here. So let's just kind of recap this. A velocity difference of 200 feet per second means an elevation difference of, what did I say, 1.1 mils, right? So I don't have to dial 7.1, I dial 6. And a windage difference of 2/10 of a mil. So in the one scenario with the slower round, I'm at 1.8 mils. And at the other, with the faster round, I'm at 1.6 mils. The difference in flight is 1/10 of a second. The interesting thing to me was, in that 1/10 of a second difference, the elevation is that drastic and the windage is, 10%, right? A little more than 10% less. So here are the answers from the team. And I'm not going to put names to these, but it doesn't matter. Answer number 1. The faster round gives you 0.1 of error on either side of your wobble zone. Good point. It's more about your wind call error. The faster round allows you to be more wrong on wind direction and speed. And so what he's saying is that 2/10 can help you both with the wind, with wind error, right? You think the wind is 10 miles an hour down there, but it's really not. It's 8 miles an hour or it's 12 miles an hour. And you have less of an error to deal with down there with a faster bullet. Or you're wobbling, and now that 2/10 less windage that you have to deal with is helping to compensate better for that wobble. That makes sense. Number two, if you're shooting at full-size IPSC plates, the difference isn't too meaningful, correct. If you're shooting at a 2 MOA plate, it might be. So let's talk about that. A 2 MOA plate at 850 yards means the plate is about 17 inches. So the plate is this big. This is how wide the plate is at 850 yards. So yes, that answer is correct. If you're shooting at this big IPSC plate that's, 24 inches wide and 30 inches tall, it's not that big of a deal, but as your target size comes down, it is. Third, I would argue that the slower round, and I love this answer, by the way, I would argue that the slower round is better for PRS because, however small, it gives you more time to settle the gun and watch for impact. What he's talking about now is you have more powder in the case to drive that bullet faster, which means you have more recoil, and the slower round is giving you less recoil, giving you more time to see your impact, where you're missing and where you're not missing. I like that answer. I like that answer a lot. Another answer. A better way to compare the two options is to set your wind down to a 1.5 to 2 miles an hour and play with directions. That way you can see, quote, if I am off 2 miles an hour on my wind call, or I am a half hour off on wind direction, I have a X% error window. Now this is getting very detailed, and I'm going to be doing a video, hopefully with one of these buddies, on this exact topic, on wind. I did a video a while ago that I thought turned out really well, and it was a basic wind video. In this next video, I really want to get into not only the wind call, but the wind direction, right? What is the value of the wind? What direction is the value of the wind? How is that impacting you when you're setting up for a shot and you're having to adjust mid-stage? So this is a really good answer, and it gives you a lot more to consider. Well, let's move on to final thoughts and have some conversation about these answers and my thoughts on them. Well, I should have prefaced this at the beginning of this video. This is not a definitive, you should do this video, right? This isn't that. This is to make us start thinking about the things that we're doing when we are reloading, right? And why we're doing them. If you listen to people and you think that the 2950 value is good for you, why are you doing that? I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm asking you the question for you to ask yourself the question, why am I going to run this at 2950? Is it to say at a match that I run 2950? Or is there really a reason to run it at 2950? If there is, then great. Then there's your velocity, and that's what you're going to go with. I just wanted to bring this up about my question to the team and their answers, because a couple of these answers really stood out. All of them really were excellent answers, in my opinion. The one that I really loved was about the less recoil, staying on the target, on your follow-up shot, being able to get back on that follow-up shot. That is very valid. That is a very valid answer there. Here's my thought on this. If you get good with wind and calling wind, none of this should matter to you, right? Not even the fact that it's a 0.2 mil difference in the wind. It just shouldn't matter. I'm still learning to get good on wind. I still struggle with wind. And there's some guys, in fact, the gentleman who won our match, our overall match for last year, is a wind wizard. I've heard of how he does his wind and the brackets he builds and how and I shoot with another guy who was like this. They build like 3 or 4 brackets, like every 2 miles an hour. And on their first target, let's say, they'll find the bracket, and then that's the bracket they run with. But they're very fast in their mind to do that, and I'm trying to get that way. At the end of the day, as I just said, get your velocity, get your wind calls with that velocity, work up a matrix of this is my velocity, and in these winds, this is what I should be holding or dialing for wind. And I think you'll be a lot better off if you just go at it with that simple concept. Well, hey, thanks for watching another one. I really do appreciate it. And I've got some other stuff coming up. We're going to do some comparisons on powder and bullet lots or ammo lots to see if is it really truth to that different lots produce different results, or is it just a myth? Thanks for watching, everyone. And until next time, shoot straight.